Good afternoon, everybody, and Happy New Year. Appreciate everybody taking the time here to join us for the Colorado Geographic Naming Advisory Board meeting, January 8th, 2021. Want to open the meeting now. And just again, wish everybody a Happy New Year and hope you are doing well and had a very restful holiday season. It's good to see everybody. My name's Tim Mock. For those that I haven't had a chance to meet, I'm the Deputy Director for the Department of Natural Resources, and I am the DNR's appointment to this advisory board, and I look forward to continuing to work with everybody. Want to start off here with the roll call. Representative Will. Here. Representative Benavides.
Here as well.
Representative Exum.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We appreciate you joining us.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Joseph.
Present.
Commissioner Cimino is joining us right now, it looks like. And Commissioner Cimino just called your name on the roll, so appreciate you joining us. Welcome.
Thank you.
Ms. Redhorse.
Present. Good afternoon.
Dr. Way.
Here.
Dr. Limerick.
Here.
Ms. Berry. Do not see Karen Berry at the moment. Mr. Benitez, my understanding is that he will be joining us a little late. Ms. Nelson. Do not see Ms. Nelson. Dr. Gonzalez.
I'm here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Tim Mock is present. Executive Director Garcia.
Yes, I'm here, Tim. Happy New Year to all.
Happy New Year. And Director Ritter with the Colorado Tourism Office has also informed us that she will be joining the meeting in just a little bit. Again, I want to welcome the public and everybody to the meeting. A couple of housekeeping items here as we work through this. I just encourage everybody to keep your microphones on mute as we work through this. There is under the participant button there an opportunity to raise your hand. We will also try and feel free to wave your arms wildly or civilly, and we'll try and flag you down that way as well. Johnny can help us kind of keep track of who's got their hands raised. Before we get with the agenda, I do notice a couple of items that I'd like to add to the agenda here. One is the appointment of a temporary meeting chair. The second item following that, and that we'll add is the new agenda item 1. The new agenda item 2 is approval of the agenda. And then I would like to add, following the process to consider naming, renaming features, public comment. And so with that, is there, last meeting, I was appointed as a temporary meeting chair as we work through the bylaws. When we ratify those bylaws, we will then identify its anticipated chair, a permanent chair and vice chair, according to the bylaws that we pass. So with that, do I have a motion to appoint a temporary meeting chair? I'm happy to continue in that role.
So moved.
Second, Rick Garcia.
Okay, we've got Representative Benavides moved by Executive Director Garcia. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, the motion carries unanimously, it looks like. Approval of the agenda. Do we have any other items that we would like to add to the agenda?
You should probably add adjournment at the end.
We will add adjournment at the end.
I'm just wondering, now that we get past bylaws, could we discuss regular meeting times, or at least the next meeting time?
Yes, Representative, I think that's a fantastic idea. Why don't we add that following our renaming features? We'll add discuss meeting times right before public comment. Okay, are there any other edits to the agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to accept the agenda? So moved by Dr. Way.
Second.
Second.
Second by Representative Exum. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand by signifying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries unanimously. All right, before I get underway, real quickly, I just want to also introduce Jonathan Asher with the governor's office. Jonathan is the individual from the governor's office that will be assisting the Colorado Geographic Naming Advisory Board, will be our point of contact. Jonathan, did you want to take a second and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure, happy to. Jonathan Asher, Senior Policy Advisor with the Governor's Office. Yeah, I mean, I don't have necessarily a long introduction other than just to say thank you to everybody. You know, I know that, you know, everybody's here as a volunteer, and you know, the governor's, you know, appreciative of that and this effort in particular. You know, via our EO earlier or late last year, and just kind of excited to undertake this work. So thanks very much, appreciate it.
Okay, thank you and welcome. All right, so on our first agenda item, we have review and approval of the October meeting summary. That went out in your email from Johnny at the beginning of the week. Is there any discussion or edits or considerations regarding the meeting summary? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt and approve? Dr. Way is moved. Is there a second?
Second.
And Council Member Joseph, I see with the second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries unanimously. All right, next agenda item, review and ratify the bylaws. All right, so last time I think we were able to continue to look at everybody and work on the bylaws. I'm happy to bring those up if we would like. Oh, I'm sorry, and I just want to let the records show that we are joined by Ms. Ritter with the Colorado Tourism Office. Good afternoon and Happy New Year. Thank you for joining us. What is your preference here? If you've got the bylaws up on your screen, we can work that way, or I can have Chris Aaron from DNR share the screen and we can work from there. Does anybody have any preference on how we work through those?
Share the screen would be my preference.
Okay.
Share the screen if you can, Tim.
Okay, that's perfect. We'll go ahead and share the screen. So now that we've got a handful of folks that have are sharing their screen, Johnny, if you can kind of look out for any hand raises, that would be, and feel free to interrupt me, or feel free, your board members, to jump in here and let us know if you've got something you'd like to discuss or add to the conversation. So just a couple of updates here regarding the bylaws. Really appreciate the conversation that we had last meeting that provided a great level of guidance and input, and so we certainly appreciate that. I also want to recognize the AG's office, Amy Beatty and Lindsay Ratcliffe, who are staffing this board, and acknowledge them for their efforts to pull this together. We were able to take your comments and the input and the feedback, and we revised the bylaws that were again sent out to this body. And we were also able to have a conversation with the governor's office regarding the bylaws. So what you see here, I think, represents kind of, what how we generally operate a lot of our other boards and commissions with the Department of Natural Resources, and then also consistent with the governor's intentions in establishing this body. Before I begin, are there any general comments that anybody may have regarding the bylaws? Okay, with that then, we'll go ahead and work through these here. I'll just kind of summarize some of the parts that we were able to work through last meeting. Again, raise your hand or speak up if you want to interject or raise a question or point of discussion. So Article 2 here, the purpose, basically identifies the two purposes, the two types of naming proposals that this board will consider. Those that come from the USBGN, Board of Geographic Naming Places, and then those outside of that process. Pretty straightforward, kind of discuss that, and they're consistent with the executive order. Any discussion points there? Great, seeing none, we'll move to Article 3, the powers and duties. Again, these are reflect the executive order in our conversation last month in terms of the powers and duties of this board to consider and make recommendations regarding geographic and place name changes to the state of Colorado. And the two purposes essentially that we are formed to consider, and how we shall essentially be called together and meet as necessary as the governor deems appropriate, or as necessary to consider matters before the body. Any discussion points regarding this section here, Article 3? Okay, with that, we'll move on to Article 4. Again, you'll see that this reflects the general makeup of the board as laid out by the executive order. We also identify that we were handed 2- and 4-year terms, and then thereafter board members shall serve 4-year terms. And then in the event of a midterm vacancy, the new appointment shall serve for the remainder of the board. Section 3 under Article 4, we do expect regular attendance at the board. And then Section 4, the ways in which if you decide to resign from the board, you may notify the governor either directly or through the Department of Natural Resources Executive Director. And the chairperson is defined in Article 5 of the bylaws. Any questions regarding section or Article 4? Good. Article 5, officers. This is our, again, I think reflective of the good conversation that we had last meeting, that we shall elect from our boards a chairperson and vice chair. We will elect those in February of each year annually. I think that if we are able to get through the bylaws today, we are on pace then for a February election of our chair and vice chair. The first chairperson, the first vice chair elected in February of 2021 shall serve for 2 years. And then after those 2 years, the vice chairperson will become the chairperson for 1 year, and all subsequent chairpersons and vice chairpersons shall serve for 1 year. Officers may participate in the discussion and vote as any other board member, and then officers shall hold their offices at the pleasure of the board. Any discussions regarding that section 1? Hearing none. Moving forward, section 2 lays out the duties of the officers presiding over all board meetings when in attendance, building the agenda in coordination with the board administrator and the executive director of the DNR or his or her designee. Be aware of board and committee activities, hold votes, observe and enforce the board bylaws, and perform all such other duties of the office as provided by these bylaws prescribed by the board. Anything in section 2 for discussion? And seeing none, in section 3 there, in the absence, lays out in the absence of a chairperson, the vice chair shall step in to fulfill those duties. And should the chairperson and vice chairperson both be absent at any meeting in which the quorum is present, the board members shall elect a chairperson to serve for that meeting only. Any comments on section 3? All right, now moving to Article 6 here on meetings. This, I think, was a very robust conversation, and this is somewhere where we did engage the governor's office to discuss this. We do have a number, I think we have very involved board members in their communities and in their professions. Just like our other boards, a quorum is established by a majority of the board members. And then in the absence of quorum, any work of the board is null and void except to take measure to obtain a quorum or schedule another meeting. I do want to point out, just as a slight FYI right here, and we'll discuss it later on in Article 8, that what we've tried to balance out, hearing about the conversation about a desire to have significant participation in terms of passing measures that are before the board. You'll see in Article 8 when we get there that we are asking for, requiring a 2/3 majority for items to pass that are being considered by the board. Any questions on section 1 here? Or comments?
Tim.
Yes.
I'm going to pause for a second because I think, we have the benefit of Jennifer Runyon's experience. And so I just wanted to make clear that in the event that she has thoughts, we didn't hear much from her last time around. So if she has thoughts or questions, then I'd love, maybe once we get to the end, to specifically invite her to provide some feedback.
Sure, that would be great. And just as a reminder, or for those that have not had the opportunity to meet Ms. Runyon, she works for the U.S. Board of Geographic Names, is very familiar with the other state advisory boards and how they operate. There is, as we learned in our very first introductory meeting mid last year, a breadth of how the various boards and states work, but I think that's a fine idea, Amy. All right, section 2, under the meetings, the board shall meet at the call of the officers, board administrator, the governor, or a quorum of the board members. Meeting may be canceled by the officers or a quorum of the board members. When it is determined in consultation with DNR staff, the meeting is not needed or when there will not be a quorum present. Board members may participate in the meeting via teleconference or other remote means. So we will do everything possible. I do anticipate that for the time being, I think through this year, certainly through probably midsummer, we will continue to meet via this Zoom platform. Should we be able to meet in person, we will open up certainly a teleconference line. We are examining how we can kind of integrate board meetings via Zoom and in person. We had a little bit of experience over the last year with some of our other boards in making that work. So that is a very strong possibility. Section 3, all meetings of the board should be open to the public, obviously, and in accordance with the Colorado Open Meetings Law. There are executive sessions that's authorized by law. Notice of the meetings and agendas should be posted on the board's website 24 hours prior to a meeting. And then it talks about the agenda and the order of business may be changed by the chairperson or majority vote of the board members present. And all meetings of the board shall be memorialized in appropriate meetings, which shall be considered official until approved by the board. Any executive sessions entered into the board shall be recorded as required by law. Any further comments regarding Article 6 here? Okay, Article 7, committees and task forces. Committees may be established as needed by a vote of the board. We know that we will have an exceptional amount of work. There is roughly somewhere between 15 and 20 proposals I know pending before the USBGN that we hope to accomplish. We do think that there very well may need to have some committees formed or subcommittees to help us kind of move some of this work forward. Special advisory committees may be created to advise the board and confer the board concerning the geographic and place name changes and new names for the state. Special advisory committees may be established as needed by a vote of the board. Any special advisory committee so established, and then it says shall act only in an advisory capacity, shall meet with the board at least once a year, shall fix times and places for their meetings and report the same to the board administrator, and that ultimately has no decision-making authority. Again, they serve in an advisory role and helps us perform some of the work at hand in getting organized to discuss the matters that will be before the board. And then the board may dissolve any board committee or special advisory committee established under this article at any time by a vote of the board. Any comments there? Very good. On to Article 8, voting and balloting procedures. Any matter submitted to a vote of the board members must be submitted as a motion and will be deemed to have passed if such motion receives a favorable vote of 2/3 of the board members present, except where a different voting structure is required by law. And then Section 2, any instance in which a vote is called for, the chairperson may call for a show of hands, voice vote, or such voting method shall determine the result of the vote, and there is no proxy or absentee voting shall be allowed. All board members, including the officers, have voting rights. Any discussion on Article 8 here? Yes, Ms. Ritter.
Yes, Mr. Mock. Just a quick question about, do you know of an example of a state law that would require a different voting structure? I was just trying to wrap my head around that one.
I'm not certain. Amy, Ms. Beatty, would you have any insight here?
Yeah, there are requirements such as adjourning a meeting that must be unanimous. The law also specifies what is required in order to go into executive session, and that is not 2/3 of a quorum, that is 2/3 of the board. So there are certain areas where the law requires different voting structures than what we spelled out in the bylaws.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Any further comments or discussion?
I had a comment. Well, and having talked to some people before this meeting, I'm fine with this since we're allowing remote participation, but people, it really is incumbent on all of us to attend these meetings in person or in remotely, because by having a 2/3 vote, that if we only had a majority, 8 of us, to make quorum, a 2/3 vote is 6. And if we were voting on one of the proposals, not just an administrative issue, but one of the proposals, it could pass with 6 votes, which is less than half of the entire commission. And since it's not allowing proxy or absentee voting, you know, it really puts the burden on all of us to make sure we're there when these are going to be voted on. So we have a sufficient number voting on that.
Thanks, Representative. I think that that's an exceptional point. I think that we can also, as we discuss our upcoming meetings and what may or may not be on the agenda, we might be able to make sure that we're timing it with people's attendance in the case that we hit some point that we have absent members. So I think that's a very good point and well taken. Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay. Article 9, Parliamentary Authority, Section 1. The meetings shall be conducted generally in keeping with Robert's Rules of Order, but shall be as informal as circumstances permit. And then the board action, if the board action is clear, such action is not invalid if the action failed to strictly adhere to processes spelled out in Robert's Rules of Order. Any discussion? And then moving on to Article 10, the bylaws, they will take effect immediately upon a vote of the board. The bylaws may be amended in whole or in part at a board meeting by vote. An adopted amendment shall take effect immediately. Any discussion? Article 11, conflicts of interest, lays out again, how we discuss or address conflicts of interest. Board members shall not perform an official act which may have a direct economic benefit on a business or other undertaking which such manner has a direct or substantial financial interest. 2, the board shall not adopt a guidance document to guide consideration of conflicts, or the board shall adopt a guidance document to guide consideration of conflicts and interest and shall use the guidance document to assist with assessing conflicts. Attorney General, Assistant Attorney General Beatty, is that a document that I'm assuming you will help us draft up? And that's, I think we're actually going to spend some time discussing conflicts of interest and those type things. Is that correct?
We've actually provided you with the draft of that document, and the draft may already have been submitted to the board. It may have been done before the last meeting. So we do have something ready to go that we could put on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay, we will pull that up and discuss that. And then if board members have a question regarding a potential conflict of interest, I'm assuming, Ms. Beatty, that they are able to discuss that matter with you.
I would be very grateful if they would if we had a partnership to talk through potential conflict issues. Yes, I am available, and it is preferred.
And to receive guidance. Thank you. Any further comments or discussion? All right, and then on to Article 12, board staff. We are supported by a board administrator. DNR, we would designate Johnny Abed, who is helping us here with the Zoom, who is sending out the emails and communication to the board as the board administrator, and to help support our functions. That position is not a voting member of the board, and the duties of the board administrator include but are not limited to taking the board minutes, coordinating meeting schedules and assisting with board communications. And then in addition to the board administrator, the board shall be supported in a staff capacity by the Office of the Governor and by staff at Department of Local Affairs as needed. Services of staff provided to the board from the Office of the Governor and the Department of Local Affairs may be further defined in a memorandum of understanding. Any questions or discussion? Great. Okay, so that gets us to the end of that document as you see it. I don't think we have not made any amendments to it as it has been proposed. So I'm just wondering if there are any comments regarding the document in general and to its overall nature. Seeing none, we do have then on our agenda the ratification of the bylaws. Chris, if you wouldn't mind returning us all to the larger screen.
Tim, did we want Jennifer to provide some comments now, or?
Yeah, actually, that would be great. Ms. Runyon, are you able to unmute yourself? There you are. Hey, welcome. So. Good to see you. Wondered if you had any input or anything for us to consider in regards to the bylaws that we've just laid out.
Yeah, thank you very much. I, once again, appreciate you allowing me to join the meeting and participate. And this is always just wonderful to hear it firsthand. And of course, Happy New Year to you all. I did, and I apologize. I should have probably shared these with you some time ago. I have some comments and or questions that some may be related to the bylaws, some may be more in some future policy guidance document, which I assume will be coming later, more about the how-to, you know, how you intend to process proposals. So I have a list of just comments that I made for myself. I guess if I could indulge you for a few minutes, I'll just go through and you can tell me. Obviously, you know, Amy and Lindsay, they are far more authoritative than me in developing bylaws. I did take a look at the US BGN's bylaws just to kind of see if there were any disconnects or things I could add. So I apologize in advance. I could obviously share these two offline later, perhaps with Amy and Tim and Johnny. And feel free to tell me right up front that no, these don't fit in the bylaws. These might be, again, more policy procedure, but I'll do my best to keep it short. Just give you some things to think about, maybe, perhaps. So some of them are very, very minor. The very, very first one I have is obviously throughout the document you refer to board. And, you know, we use the board also for the US BGN. And I know in communication with Tim and Johnny, I know I typically refer to you all as the CGNAB. I tend to prefer acronyms. So I didn't know whether it's appropriate anywhere to include the acronym in the bylaws or if that's just a, you know, offhand procedural thing. So that's, I'm not even really asking for answers here or even just kind of throw it out for thoughts. And along the lines of a process guidance document, should that be referenced in the bylaws anywhere? Is there a need to point out that the bylaws are just your overall operating guidance and that there will be further process guidance document that presumably could be modified more on the fly? The bylaws are supposed to sort of hold up forever, right? They're supposed to be only changed if really needed. So I don't know whether you want to refer to the policy or the process document in this bylaws.
Hey, Tim, can we talk process here, because I now have several questions and it looks like Jennifer has a lot of thoughts, and I'm wondering if we might want to consider kind of ticking them off one by one.
Okay, please, Ms. Beatty, go for it.
So on the board versus CGNAB and USBGN, it is very common in a document to refer to the board as just the board, but to refer to them publicly by their abbreviation. So I don't think we need to fix that for purposes of the bylaws. We should be fine here. And I think it will be clear who we're dealing with. So that inconsistency doesn't worry me. I'm sorry, will you start from the beginning so that I can hit them all at once?
Sure, yeah, that was the first one. And again, I just want to make sure it was okay to use the acronym informally and internal communication.
Yeah, I think it's great. And I've even seen CNAB, I've seen a whole, but so yes. I think, we'll see iterations. Yeah,
exactly. And you may well, and I should have said too that I know later on the agenda, there's a whole another section on the processes. So, a lot of this will probably overlap with that. So the second comment there was, given that you will be developing a process/guidance document, should that be referenced anywhere in the bylaws? Or is it understood that an organization is going to naturally have bylaws and a process document, and they don't have to be cross-referenced, should we say? I don't know if that's appropriate to include those here.
There's no legal requirement that they're cross-referenced.
Okay.
And I'm speaking on behalf of staff here, so Chris, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think they will be right next to each other, hot linked on the website. So if somebody wants to review the bylaws, they'll be able to, but right below that will be a guidance document for submission of proposals. Okay. And so people will have them as a very public, very obvious reference.
Okay.
Could I mention on that what she's talking about in the bylaws, actually at the top of page 2, under the powers and duties of the board, it talks about those internal policies. So it already referenced that we could do it for the naming procedures or anything else. So we haven't overlooked it. It is in there.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah, because it's definitely worth noting that there's a process in itself for updating the processes. And maybe that should go in the process document. So thank you, Representative Benavides. That's good to point out that it's sort of kind of addressed already.
I guess just one other reaction to that, which is we did say we would adopt a conflicts document, guidance document. So there is a precedent in there to say we'll adopt a document. Okay. That was really because it has become best practices to have a written conflicts document. And in adopting the bylaws, I wanted to make sure the board held itself to the standard to adopt some written conflicts policies. So that's why it's specifically spelled out in the bylaws.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that. Again, I'm already thinking this next one is probably belongs more in the process document, is the fact that, should the Colorado board be reactive or proactive in any way? Again, I think that's probably better under process.
That's coming. It'll be our next agenda item.
Okay, good. And then let's see, under Article 2, Item A, where it talks about that the Colorado board will evaluate proposals concerning name changes. I made a note to myself from the public, from any organization, or just from the BGN.
We will be addressing that also in another process document as well for that section.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to try and go through these very quickly. So these are just things I thought out loud, and I may be getting ahead of myself, and probably am. And the fact that under Section B of Article 2, where you talk about features that are not within the US BGN's purview, again, our purview is only for natural features, and it does appear from the executive order that you've been instructed to address features on certain public places and man-made geographic features. Again, the question of items on places on private property presumably will be addressed under process, like.
That'll be also part of that process document in terms of how we address that power.
Okay. So I don't know whether that needs to be in the bylaws or not, but yeah, okay, that makes sense.
And could I mention that was in the original draft that included private property, but in 2B, it's specific to public places.
Yes.
Not private.
Okay, because it says cultural geographic features, man-made geographic features, and certain public places. So I just didn't want to get you guys tied in knots when people come to you and talk about changing school names and so forth, or private ranches and places that people don't want the government getting involved in naming or renaming.
But you do bring up a point as I reread 2B. It could be certain public places that we don't clarify really in there, that were even the cultural geographic features, that we're only talking about public entities, public man-made geographic features, all of those, not just the public places, that we may want to look at that language.
And the fact you have item C says to decline to review or respond to any request for a name change. So you're sort of giving yourself an out there under item C to say, this is not under our purview.
Let me go back to Representative Benavides, your point there. It would be just a matter of moving public to the controversies of public cultural geographic places. Am I understanding that correct? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Is on B where it says geographic and place names in the state of Colorado that are public and are not within the purview of USBGN by evaluating those proposals. So the public goes to any of those.
Okay, so we would insert public then at between are and not in that first sentence there of that paragraph.
The wordsmiths could figure it out that place.
And there's actually a way for us to still approve the bylaws. We can do it with an approval subject to revisions that are in keeping with the discussion about clarifying that it's designed to cover public places, not private. Public features, not private. So we can actually move ahead by adopting the bylaws and then figure out how to conform to any changes that folks believe we need to make. So we won't need to wait another period if we're ready to roll here.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. And again, I apologize the fact that I'm throwing these in 11th hour anyway. So
we're very grateful. Well, speaking for me, and I'm probably speaking for the team, other members of the team, but we're very grateful for your perspective. So you just keep rolling.
Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate that. And again, I apologize, I'm jumping around. Actually, I'm going back up to I missed one myself, under Article 2A, well, I guess A and B. You use the word controversies. So we have name changes, new names, and controversies. I might tone that down to maybe conflicts. Controversy just sounds so like you're inviting controversy. It's up to you. And that may be appropriate in the case of geographic names, but I thought maybe conflicts, the idea of being a conflict between two published products, a conflict between local use and historical use. It's just a thought, like the word conflict.
Tim, do you want me to take this?
Yes, if you wouldn't mind.
It comes directly from the language in the executive order.
Oh.
So we're parroting language from the executive order, and I can we worked very hard not to really play with the language from the executive order when we were importing it into the bylaws. So
makes sense.
We can take a look at it, but I think we want to be.
I think it's just semantics, really, and you're right. I should have had the executive order alongside me when I was looking at this too. So I don't want to get too far off that track. And I guess along those lines, name changes. This is something that we have in our bylaws. Is a name change. We know what a name change is, but to the public or a proponent who's only dealing with this one time, a name change could be a minor spelling change. It could be a completely different name change. It could be changing a name from one feature to another, which we call an application change or location change. This probably needs to be defined under processes of, you may need a sort of almost like a definition page of some of these terms. So, because people think of a name change would only be from one name to a completely different name. Again, it could just be a minor spelling change. It's still a change as far as we're concerned. Or
And I think
again,
we're going to hold that for that next conversation as
Yeah.
well as
Okay.
part of the definitions for the process document.
Right. Good. Okay. Again, this is probably the similar, and I think we may have talked about this at the last meeting anyway, about under Article 3B, making recommendations to the governor. I presume the next steps, once the governor looks at it, will be outlined in the process, and could in fact the governor overrule the decisions of this board? And what would
That'll
that
be in the
mechanism look like?
process document, yes.
Yeah, okay, fair enough, okay. Again, maybe process, I don't know where this fits. Are decisions of this board going to be binding to the state government? Are there state products, maps, documents, or will you only consider a name or change official and once the US BGN approves it? Some states, a handful of states, very few, a decision made at the state level is binding to state maps and products. The vast majority prefer to let the BGN make the final decision and then it becomes official for state use. You just keep in mind, there might be the times where you disagree with us or we disagree with you. You know, is a decision made by the state binding? Should that be in bylaws or again, process?
We are advisory only in nature by the executive order that's been laid out. So we do not have any binding authority.
Okay, fair enough. That's good.
And
this is good to know too.
I would add that we only make recommendations to the governor, but if the governor wanted to make a change that was not what you all wanted at US, I can never remember your acronym, USBGN, that could happen, but it would probably require a law change for some of us that are in the legislature, but not for this committee to do or this commission to do.
Okay. So you're advisory to the governor, and then the governor essentially, I guess, is advisory to the USBGN in a way. As you say, it's
not on the ones under B that aren't covered by you.
No, true. Yeah, those would happen at the state level, and you would make the change, and not to be in Cal, we wouldn't care. You're right; they'd be done at the state level. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, on top of my page 2, again, this is under Article 3. Subset E, there's a sentence that reads, including but not limited to those for conducting meetings, considering, I would add new names and name changes. So right now you've got considering name changes. I would include new names in there.
I'm so sorry. I was reading a comment, so hold on. I was reading Patty Limerick's comment. If we return to this, I want to speak in support of controversies. I believe we should keep this in our portfolio. Okay, I'm sorry. Ask that next question.
Sure, of course, yes, thank you. Article 3, subset E, you refer to considering name changes. And it goes on to say, and coordinating with the governor. I would say considering new names and name changes. Add new names to that.
Oh, I see.
I know the list right now is, majority of them are name changes, but we do have 2 new names on the list, so it's just minor.
Noted.
Yep.
All right, Article 4 under members. I don't know, this might have been taken out, and I think Patty brought this up at her last meeting, is you know, the members serve for 2 or 4-year terms. Can members be reappointed? You want to keep that continuity, I would presume. It doesn't really state anywhere in here that members can be reappointed for future terms. It almost implies that you all serve a term and then you all leave. That's the way I read it anyway.
I think that's up to the governor in creation of this board. Amy, do you have any comment about that otherwise?
I have a sort of broad sweeping comment about it, which is that I don't recall the executive order specifying how many terms someone can serve, and I don't have it in front of me right now. So if someone does, it would be helpful just to check and make sure the executive order doesn't say they can serve for 2 terms or something like that. But there is a kind of across all boards policy that board members will serve only for 2 terms. And I don't think that has been rescinded, but another governor could rescind that. So if we aren't specific, I don't think, if our bylaws are silent, I don't think there is anything to say that board members couldn't be reappointed, but there may be a policy that is broader than what is incorporated in our bylaws that will apply to this board because it applies to all boards and commissions of the state.
Okay. Okay.
And I'll just add, from a policy perspective, when we were, originally thinking through the EO and stuff like that, that was not a question that we necessarily, came across or intended to include an answer to in the EO. For additional context, though, I will say that, one of our strong intents was to have, experts from, a broad diversity of kind of key stakeholder groups. And so, with respect to being able to kind of fulfill that need with, folks in our state that do have good backgrounds, in this world, I think we would want to err on being less restrictive on that front, and ensuring that the right people are participating here.
Makes sense, yeah. And I will say, from the US board's experience, having members who have been around for years and years can say, well, we had a case like this 10 years ago. How did we handle that? And we joke that our members pretty much serve until they retire from federal service. And a lot of them have been around many, many years. So I would say having that continuity is something just at the back of your minds. If a term is already 4 years, you're talking about getting 8 years in two terms. So that's a fair amount of time. And the implication, I guess, is that if you do leave, the term is up, your role is, part of it is to train your replacement, bring them on board.
Let me recognize Representative Benavides.
I was just going to say, I have a copy of the executive order. There's no limitation on terms. So it would be solely up to the discretion of the governor.
Okay, cool. All right. Let's see. Again, this is probably policy. So maybe we're saving time under the next agenda item by me bringing these up now. The implication, again, is each of you represent your agencies when you serve on this board. And I guess this isn't standard board and commission business, is that when you come to these meetings that you to make decisions on proposals, you will have vetted any material and opinions with your agency, and that you're speaking for the agency. So again, I think it's implied that when you serve on a board, you're not just doing it as a personal private citizen, you're doing it on behalf of your agency. So again, I don't know if that needs to be stated in bylaws or if that's just common sense.
It actually depends on the board member. I have experience with board members who have been very specific, even through documents filed with the governor's office on boards and commissions, to say, I'm serving in my individual capacity. And there is also an expectation for board members that they are members of the board with a duty to the entity before the board entity, and that their duty is to the board, and that if there is going to be a conflict with their own work entity, that's something else that we need to work through.
Okay, yeah. So again, common sense, I think, yeah.
Or just sort of common board and commission procedures,
yeah,
that apply.
Makes sense, yeah, thank you, yeah. Let's see. Again, I think everything else is just more procedure. Let's see, sorry. Way down under article, what was this be? 5 officers. I didn't know whether under the duties of the officers, one of them ought to be to disseminate proposal material prior to the meetings, or will there be an expectation that the material will be posted at your website and members can go look at it there? It certainly is helpful in the discussions if everybody comes ready to discuss and vote on an issue. So I don't know whether it's something that needs to be stated in the bylaws, that part of, again, the officer's role is to share material. Again, whether that needs to be in the bylaws.
That'll be a process. question to some degree. Also, with our Colorado Open Meetings laws, that's why we have Johnny send out the meeting materials and information so that the board does not have any direct communication with one another outside of the meetings, public meeting.
Okay. All right. I didn't know if it needed to be stated anywhere, but no, I think you've covered it there. Let's see. And then down under Article 7, committees and task forces. This is something I just picked up from our bylaws is we differentiate between subcommittees, special committees, and advisory committees. And certainly it's fine to roll in, special advisory committee into sort of one statement. As far as the USBGN is concerned, a subcommittee is made up only of members within the larger board. So you all would be members of subcommittees and that would be it, as opposed to special or advisory committees where you can bring in subject matter experts external to this group, to help you guide you in the process. So I didn't know if like us, we specify what's a special committee versus, or special/advisory versus a subcommittee. And it's something that's probably, you probably already have a definition in the state of a subcommittee versus a advisory committee, but just a thought.
Tim, do you want me to take this one?
Yeah, please.
Okay. This may sound pedantic and I don't intend it to, but there's the board. A level below the board would be a committee of the board, and a level below that would be a subcommittee. Okay. So it's like Russian nesting dolls, right? You have the board, then you have a committee, then you could have a subcommittee of that committee. We didn't get that granular in the bylaws. Yeah. And then the special advisory committee is really designed to serve the role that you described, which is allowing the board the opportunity to bring together non-board members who can advise the board or do work in a volunteer capacity on behalf of the board if the board doesn't have capacity to do it on its own.
Yeah, that's how we view it too, certainly, yeah, a subcommittee. So I didn't know if that needed to be spelled out or if it's just, just like I say, is rather granular, you're right. So I think, and the last one, I guess, is under board staff, Article 12. I didn't know whether it was worth adding. Under the duties of board administrator, you have currently minutes, meeting schedules, assisting with board communication, and I would add and maintain records and correspondence files of the board. Is it implied that, well, I guess in this case, Johnny, I guess, would be her job to maintain? Again, it's in our bylaws. It doesn't have to be in yours. It's just a comment that part of the duties is to maintain all the correspondence and material.
And I think that include but are not limited to, I think all that would fall, okay. Unless, Amy, you think that it should be spelled out.
I just think it's common process, so okay. I think we're okay without spelling it out. Okay.
All right. Well, that is certainly more than enough for me. I will keep quiet now. Thank you, everybody. Right. Appreciate your time and your indulgence.
Ms. Runyon, we really do appreciate your time in attending these meetings and helping us get off the ground. I think certainly you provided us a lot of food for thought going into our next discussion item. Before we go there, now let me see if there's any additional general remarks regarding the bylaws. Dr. Limerick, I don't want to overlook your chat. We are going to leave controversies in there. It is language that was right out of the EO that we will maintain.
Okay.
All right, so with that, what is the board's pleasure here? I did note two potential places. One where we could, under Article 2, paragraph B, make certain that all of these naming places are public in there, and then under Article 3, paragraph E, add new names in addition to the name changes under that section. Ms. Beatty gave us an opportunity to adopt these as they are with Amy. Can you help me out here with what that language would be if there is a motion that would allow some minor corrections?
It would be that the board, somebody moves to adopt the bylaws subject to revisions to address the fact that public features will not be within the board's purview, and that the board's purview will include addressing new names as well as name changes. And if you need me to say that again, I might be able to.
Can I just say so move?
I think you can do that. We've got a motion here. Do we have a second? And then we'll open this up for discussion.
I'll second it.
Second. Did I see, Ms. Berry, was that your second? I'll say you've got the second there.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we've got a motion by Ms. Ritter and a second by Ms. Berry. Any discussion? Going once, twice, 3 times. With that, we will call the vote. I think we can do this again by a show of hands with everybody. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, and those opposed, same sign. Very good. Motion carries unanimously. We now have bylaws. We will work on also coordinating to get our signatures at the bottom of that document once the final revisions come through. I really appreciate that. And again, Amy and Lindsay, thank you for your time in pulling that together. And board members, I appreciate the conversations that we had in this. Thank you. All right. With that, we are a little bit ahead of schedule. Do we want to, we've got a break here for 10 minutes at 2:15. Do we want to take one now? Do we want to keep pressing through? If anybody needs a restroom break or to get a drink, I would prefer to just go ahead and honor that so that we're all comfortable throughout the rest of the meeting. Councilmember Joseph, break? Okay. So with that, it is 2:07. Can we take maybe an abbreviated break? So at 2:15, we will come back and reconvene. Perfect. We stand on break. Thank you. Item number 5, the process to consider renaming features. Just want to kind of give you some framework on how we're thinking about this. We are going to identify in 2 separate process documents, those purposes for which this board was created. We're going to focus the first one on, in what is here in the presentation, bucket 1, those that fall within the BGN. What Ms. Beatty's going to do is walk through some considerations for us. And what we're looking for right now is not so much getting into the debate, but if you have ideas, food for thought, things we ought to be thinking about as we design this process, please share those with us. And we will then kind of go back, or Amy and Lindsay shall do that, and work on putting together this proposed guidance document that we will then also send back out and have provide some opportunity for comment on. So again, looking for your thoughts as we consider this guidance document that you might have, that we should take back and do a little research, have some conversations with BGN, or even some of the other states and how they go about this. So with that, Ms. Beatty, is that a fine way to frame this?
Yeah, I think to put a fine point on it, rather than debate or trying to get ourselves to the place that we want to be today, please just throw things out there, spaghetti at the wall, and then we will go back through all of the comments when we draft the actual document and rely on the feedback that we got from you and try to harmonize it as best as possible and make some tough calls and then come back to you with the document. Is that sound right, Tim?
That's perfect. And then Amy, I'm thinking that if we can work through this and get some initial comments, let's take 20 to 25 minutes. So a hard stop at 2:45. We then can also go back out. We'll have Johnny follow up in an email how to communicate any additional thoughts you might have with Amy and Lindsay regarding this that might come to mind. And then that'll give us some time to finish the rest of our agenda. Does that sound fine? Okay, Amy, it's all yours.
Yeah. Okay. So just quickly, the governor's office and Tim and his team and Lindsay and I met to start to really kind of try and put shape to what a guidance document for considering these name changes and new names might look like. And we settled on 6 features of what we thought the guidance document would look like. So we're going to share the 6 features of the document with you. And then as the presentation moves on, we will share what we're calling kind of food for thought with you about each of these categories that would go into the document. So at the end of this, we would like to know from you if you think we missed a category, that there's something that's just not in there that should be, and then also just shoot out your ideas about what should be in each of these, what I think will ultimately be sections of a guidance document. So the guidance document contents will be a preamble, which will say what the guidance document is designed to cover, and that's what we've been calling bucket 1, but it's Article 2A, I think, I'm not looking at it right now, of the bylaws. There will be definitions. So Jennifer Runyon brought up some terms of art that we want to make sure that we are defining in that guidance document. There are also abbreviations and acronyms. And then we'll have guidance for how to submit proposals. Then these are the last 3. The process for how you all will consider proposals, the governor's role in considering the proposals and when and where they plug in. And then the last piece is, because we anticipate the public being interested in the decisions you're making, we wanted to really clearly delineate how the public would create a very clean interface for the public with you. So those are the 6 areas that we settled on in order to shape up the document. And then we started to dig a little bit more deeply into each of them. So we flagged in advance some things that we thought you all might need to consider. And the preamble and the definition section, we hope, are reasonably straightforward. The preamble will say that this is the bucket 1, or the recommendations that fall within the purview of USBGN. And then the definitions will address abbreviations, acronyms, and any important defined terms that are necessary for someone to understand in order to read the rest of the guidance document. So I'm going to pause here. This is very, it's conceptual right now, but it would be section 1, preamble. This guidance document is designed to cover name changes that fall within the purview of the USBGN as spelled out in Article 2, Section 1 of the bylaws. And then there will be a break, and then it will be Section 2, definitions, and then it will just have a series of definitions. So I'm going to stop here and see if you guys have any thoughts, questions, concerns, both about the big picture structure and these 2 kind of first groups of things that will go into the guidance document. And I can only see 4 people on my screen, so
Representative Benavides has her hand raised.
Representative Benavides.
Okay.
Right. I would just say, if the preamble, it should cover both of the purposes under the bylaws we just passed, which is not just the ones within the USBGN purview, but also the ones in section Article 2, Section 1B, all those others that are not under USBGN purview.
Yep, we're thinking about dividing these into two separate kind of process documents, one that deals with the first and then one that deals with the second. And that way, what we're thinking about, like I said, we're just looking for food for thought, so we can certainly take that into consideration if it's best to combine everything. But we certainly want to get underway with the USBGN considerations and figure that that'll also help kind of give us some level of experience in working on these and what that next process might look like. But like I said, this is what we're looking for is just the food for thought right now. Is there any other?
So you're talking about having two separate documents, one
Yes.
for the A purpose and one for B purpose from the bylaw.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if we come up with a process if they're going to be really that different. I know the USBGN has some specifics, but I don't know. It's fine if you want two documents.
They will be considerably different. One is a process that involves a federal agency, and the other involves a process that we haven't even begun to really think about. And you do have a lot of proposals kind of in the queue, and so we are trying to get you moving on the proposals that are in the queue from the USBGN. But the processes, I think, will look very different.
Any other comments? Okay.
Preamble and definitions. Okay, so the next part of the guidance document is going to be how do people submit an application to you all to consider, or a proposal to you all to consider a name change. And our feeling was that this board was set up with very limited staffing resources, and we were thinking about things like, do we need to have our own forms? How do we have somebody who can do outreach to the local community and county commissioners to do all the homework that it really requires in order to get these proposals in a shape that you all can make a decision, so that they're kind of packaged up well enough so that you all can make a decision. And where we landed in our recommendation to you all is to actually encourage folks to go through the USBGN first, which has resources and expertise, and allow the USBGN to do the legwork to create a proposal that is all packaged up, and then have that proposal submitted to you all. So this is sort of the heart of this recommendation, so we'd love some feedback from you.
If I could just kind of elaborate on this a little bit, in that initial presentation from Ms. Runyon, that there are ways that the proposals could come through us, or they go through the BGN. The BGN also, as we discussed, like the 18 proposals that are pending before them now, are in various states of having all of the meeting material. There's a uniform form that they've already created. And so part of kind of what we are thinking is that let's take advantage of that opportunity right now, and it helps kind of sort out and prioritize and identify, for lack of better terms, those that are more ready than others, that have county commissioner input or a level of support, that have tribal input, that have all of the I's and dotted and T's crossed. And that then kind of helps us sort of prioritize and identify what's ready to go in what cracks maybe we need to kind of help backfill in terms of better understanding the proposals. So with that, any comments? Representative Benavides.
You know, you guys sent out the article on the places in, I think it was Texas, with the word Negro in the place, and that there was a surprise that none of those were going through. And one of the reasons is that there wasn't county input. That was what the article talked about. So if you're going to rely on the USBGN process, I think we need to know more specific what they're going to cover, because if they're not covering things because they denied them because there wasn't county input, then we need to start getting county input initially, or it's going to drag the process out further. So I think if you do this, you be very specific as what they are going to be looking at, so we can look at other things
Other comments? Yeah, so I think then just with what Representative Benavides explained there, we do need to understand fully what that BGM process is and what the expectations are between the two organizations, and make sure that we're coordinated appropriately. So I think that's a very good point.
And that if there's anything missing from their process, that we design processes to address whatever other information the board might want, information or outreach. All right, moving on. So this pertains to once you have a packaged up proposal for your review with all the information that you want, how do you consider those proposals? So there are all kinds of things that you'll need to think about. One is the frequency of your proposal review. Do you want to review proposals at every meeting? Do you want to review them twice a year? Do you want to review them quarterly? You'll need to think about what other business might be out there, and if you want to have these sort of bucket one proposals in surges, like twice a year, or if you just want a steady stream, steady diet of proposal business at all of your meetings. We will also, we consider the fact that the board doesn't actually have true staff and staffing resources. So while the BGN can put these proposals together, we thought it might be beneficial for you all to consider who might be the sort of advocate or expert for a particular proposal who can then present it to the board. So we just thought that it would be really messy and hard for a proposal to just kind of land and then have the full board be responsible for how to consider those proposals. So we were thinking that the board administrator or DNR staff somehow could potentially be the advocate, someone from the Attorney General's office, the staffing that's spelled out in the executive order. Is it the full board? Is it individual board members? The Oregon assigns proposals that come through to an individual board member who becomes the sort of person who is responsible for shepherding it through your processes. Is it a committee that's made up of board members, or is it a, what were we calling them, special advisory committee? So you have a lot of different models that you can use to consider how, once a proposal comes from the USBGN to you all, it will continue to make its way through your process.
And Amy, when you say advocate, can I just ask a question there? It's kind of who's going to help walk this through the board, who's going to present it, essentially, not advocate for it in the sense of fully support it necessarily, correct?
Yes, and I realized once I looked at the slide again that term was in there, and I was almost uncomfortable saying it. So it is really the sort of person who is shepherding it through your processes, not somebody who needs to be the true believer.
Are there any comments regarding this
well, there are a few more things. I kind of want to just sort of throw all the things that that are sort of food for thought, things for the board to consider, and then we can have a discussion. We were also proposing a two-part process for consideration, where the board would actually hear proposal, get information, have discussion amongst each other, and not actually vote on it when you first see it, so that you have time between when you hear about it and have a presentation on it and when you actually need to vote. So we were proposing an initial consideration, then a second consideration, where the guidance document would spell out that it would be ripe for a vote at the second consideration. Then we could also build in processes where if you need more time to think or gather more information, you can have a third consideration and a fourth, but after the second, it would be ripe for voting. We also realized that you might want to have a process for reconsideration. If you deny a proposal, do you want to give people, say, limited opportunities, or spell out very limited times when they might be able to come back to you for reconsideration? We thought that you would want to have some process for when there might be competing proposals, or like the situation in Texas, Representative Benavides, where no new names were proposed, which made it very difficult to act on a name change proposal when there hasn't been homework done about what it should be changed to. And also we think this should include, the executive order says that you don't have to consider proposals. So we want to talk about what it might look like for you to just sort of outright reject something. So those are the kind of food for thought around your own process that you might want to chew on.
Amy, can we also send this out following this meeting, sharing this presentation so folks can continue to think about it and then have their comments submit back to Johnny?
Yep.
Okay. Is there any comments on this section, Representative Benavides?
You know, I know there's some administrative work that's going to have to get done to make sure that, say, outreach or something is mailed out to interested parties, whether it's just county or others in the area. I think if USBGN doesn't do that, so somebody has to evaluate what comes over from them, figure out what else we need. And I just assume it'll be through the staffing that to get a package together. But I know in the legislature, we have the proponents come forward with their proposal and make their case and even provide witnesses to that extent. And expert witnesses, some of those that you're talking about there, are always welcome, but you don't mention it here, but I really assume that there would be some public hearings on some of these proposals, particularly when there are competing names or there's interest in this, and to learn some of the historic background of some of these names that maybe haven't come out through the written proposal that went in, provides us the opportunity to hear from more people. And you know, if we have the information well in advance and we hear public testimony, we can always make a decision then. If we feel like there's more, we can lay it over and ask for additional things to be provided and make a decision later. But I know it's not listed in here, but I'm really a proponent of some kind of public hearing, because this commission got a lot of press, and I heard from a lot of people when I was put on this to consider this and this. So I think the public is interested and wants their voice heard. So I would add, a public hearing component to this.
Thank you.
Okay, so Tim, we have Junie Joseph and also Catherine Redhorse.
Okay, so we'll go Council Member Joseph and then Director Redhorse.
Thank you so much. Just so you know, I don't know why, but I don't have that option on my computer to raise my hand.
Oh.
So I had my hand raised, but you didn't see me, so that's why I typed
Send it through the chat
box.
then if you don't have that option, just like you did. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to support Representative Benavides' comment. I think the idea of public hearing is great, just to get, people's perspective, the community's perspective. It's so important. And it also will help guide the work that we do. So I think it's very important and necessary, especially if, we can expect that some of the work will be controversial. And I just wanted to respond to the frequency issue. I think with the public hearing, then maybe having direct proposal coming to us will then be the way to go, because I'm thinking, how would that work if we were to have, triage from, I guess, whether we would have a subcommittee or not, to bring everything to the full board. So I suppose we can have the public hearing on the things that have already been triaged. So I'm walking myself through just looking at the proposal, but I was thinking, 2 times a year might be too little. So I think maybe 3 times or 4 times a year might be better, unless there is a backlog. Do we have a backlog right now so that it can take us to the next 6 months? Because if we don't, what are we doing in this, on this board? We'll have so much time where we're not getting a lot of work done. So I think maybe 3 to 4 times a year might be better. And then I think my question, because you mentioned who's the advocate for a proposal, and I'm wondering, do we have a subcommittee for that already, or will that be something that we're considering?
Actually, Councilmember, can you say that last part one more time?
Okay, I see that you have a list of, go ahead, sorry.
Well, Tim, she had said, do we already have a committee or a subcommittee set up? And you all don't have any committees set up. So right now we're trying to consider what the best structure would look like for when a proposal comes before you. And there are all kinds of different ways that you can think through this. So you can have the proponents come, make a recommendation. If it's fairly straightforward, maybe you don't need a committee. Maybe you can form committees on an as-needed basis. But at least for right now, you don't have a committee set up yet.
Okay. Yeah, I think my experience from being on other boards is, I think this idea of having even board members from here or current board members being involved in the process, but also have, as you mentioned, administrators and DNR staff to help guide the process. Because it will be, I think it would be similar to, how do I put it, double dipping, to have just board members as subcommittee members without having the guidance of DNR staff members. So I think having that as being part of the process will be slightly more balanced if we were to go that route.
Okay, thank you. Director Redhorse.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you. I do want to echo, Representative Benavides' comment about having that public hearing comment portion, and I think it should be in the process of the proposal. Additionally, I also feel like, whether it is in a special advisory committee where we have tribal representatives to be part of that process in the proposal reviews, I think those are two separate entities that we definitely need to hear on before we decide on any of the proposals at hand. And I think if I remember correctly in the BGN process is that if it's on federal land or tribal reservation land, then it's definitely a necessity to have that tribal or the tribal nation's perspective or support in that name change. However, in the state of Colorado, as we know, well, across our nation, I should say, is that, we're all on indigenous land. And so regardless of where the proposal or the renaming change is that we need to hear from the tribal nations about their perspective on all of the proposals, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. And we also have some comments coming through the chat, and we'll also take note of those as we go along. Is there any other comments?
Professor Way has his hand raised, Tim.
Dr. Way?
Yes, I too wanted to support Representative Benavides' suggestion or recommendation that we have public comment. And the reasons for that have already been stated by Representative Joseph and Redhorse.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Amy, back to you.
Okay, so the last piece, thank you, by the way, for all your thoughts and feedback. It's really helpful. We're in those sort of very, very, very early stages of what this could look like, and your comments are going to be really helpful as it takes shape. The next piece is the governor's interface with the proposal process. And these discussions are ongoing. I think when there is a better sense of what works, the draft guidance document that comes to you all will share conversations between the governor's office and DNR about how it's easiest to involve the governor and to also keep your work moving. Any thoughts or comments here? Okay. And then the last piece is the public comment piece. This is not the proponent or the person who's brought a proposal to you, but the opportunity for others to come and present. And this contemplated a sort of more hearing-esque manner in which the proposals would be queued up before the board, and then suggests that we probably want to make sure we define put some parameters around public comment. So do we want written and in person? Hang on, the APA requires public comment, but the open meetings law does not. So, and these are not actually formal APA hearings, so you're not required to have public comment, but I think it's really good idea. And then to think about time limits, and if you look at those time limits and they seem limited, if an oral presentation is married together with a written presentation, you will have a lot of information from the folks who want to present to you. And then in other boards that I work for, board questions and the answers from the folks who are appearing before the board don't count towards their time. So if they have 5 minutes to present to you and can also submit something written and you have Q&A, you may ask them questions without chewing up their time. So those are just some of the things we are thinking around public comment. Thoughts, concerns, questions?
Amy, while folks are raising their hands, I'll just chime in real quick. I do actually think that my preference would be to allow both written and in-person comments. We can submit those written comments into the record in some way. The amount of time, I don't know what that looks like right now necessarily. I think that we kind of run the gamut in terms of what's allowable, and sometimes it depends on the number of individuals that may want to speak in terms of how do you kind of structure the time at the public meeting. Any other comments?
It seems to me like people might want to comment, especially in the beginning, on process as well as an individual agenda item. And would it be worthwhile doing like what many boards do and have a general comment, public comment period for things that are not on the agenda, and that things that are on the agenda, and those could be two separate, time limits.
Yeah, that's good food for thought there. Any other comments?
I would say the one thing, you're just saying both written and in person. If we're on Zoom, we should also allow electronic testimony. And as far as the amount of time, generally I'd say in between those 3 minutes, but then also to put a caveat that it's up to the chair's discretion, because you could have one and have 100 people there, which my fellow legislators know that happens at times. So I think we'd want to put the discretion in there to limit it, but have a general time so they can prepare remarks. But the remote piece I think is important too, especially we'll be considering if we're meeting here in Denver and it's something in, on the Western Slope or anywhere else that people can't make it here. We'd want the opportunity.
Good. Other thoughts? Yes, please go.
Thank you. I just have a question before I make my comment. Written and in person, what does that mean written? Is it just like through emails, or is it we will read it because it is written during the meeting?
Yeah, it takes various forms. And I think that's something that, again, input would be, or direction would be interesting to have. As a council member and when I was a county commissioner, we allowed written comment that was then shared as part of the board packets with all board members. And then obviously we would entertain in-person type of comment. So I'll open that up. But I think that's for everybody to kind of chime in on.
Okay. I do have another question about the amount of time. I think as well, most of us have the experience of being on boards, commissions, or councils and in different bodies. When it comes to the public hearings, do we intend to have them at every meeting? And then because of the time we're talking about during the public comments or public hearings, it's going to be 2, 3, and 5 minutes. What will be the time allotted for these meetings? Is it going to be like if there's 100 people until all 100 of them speak? Or is it going to be, okay, if it's over 20 people, then only 2 people can, I mean, you only get 2 minutes, you see? So I'm not sure, yeah, what is the time frame? How will that be decided?
Yeah, again, I think that's something we're looking for those comments. I think Representative Benavides kind of identified that sometimes you do have 100 people at a meeting, and to make sure that everybody gets heard, you might limit that a little bit more, or ask folks that to limit the repetition if the comments are the same. But again, if you have any thoughts on that, wide open here.
Yeah. No, thank you. I think I appreciate the idea of the discretion from the chair, but I would like to put a limit on the discretion from the chair, meaning it could be, the discretion could be up to 4 minutes or up to 3 minutes. So let's say if there's 20 people, for instance, we do on our city council, if there's 20 people, you get 2 minutes. If there's 15 people, you get 3 minutes. So, you know, so maybe if there's more people, it could go up to no more than 4 minutes, because if we leave it to the discretion of the chair and someone can get 5, 6 minutes, it's just, it might allow the meeting to go way much longer than we can, what's the word? We can palate. So thank you. That's all my comments.
Thank you.
I think we need to, Tim, I think we need to establish a time in the policy and stick with that time.
Okay. Thank you, Representative. Any other comments?
Yes, hi. I wanted to support the idea that there should be both written as well as oral submissions. I think it's very important that they put it in writing, because it's been my experience that if you put it in writing, you are apt to make a commitment to what you've written. Whereas if you speak, sometimes it changes in mid-sentence for whatever reason. And second, I also want to support limits of some sort. I don't have any specific suggestions as to the limits of people or time, but I do think there should be limits, though I think flexibility is required, and that should be at the discretion of the chair.
Thank you. Any other thoughts, comments? Seeing none, Ms. Beatty.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So we brainstormed the 6 things that we thought would go into your guidance document. And then we brainstormed what questions we thought you might have, and we tried to give them some parameters. Did we miss anything? Do you think the guidance document is missing a category? Have you shared your piece? Do you think we've gotten enough guidance and feedback in order to be able to take this in and produce a draft document for you? Our goal, Tim, I think, is to have a draft guidance document to you by the next board meeting.
Yeah, so with that, let me do this. I think Amy just summarized what we're looking for, and your comments were exactly what we were looking for. And then for the sake of time, we will share this document, the presentation, back out, and this wasn't the end-all be-all to this conversation. As you think about this over the course of the next week or so, or between now and the next meeting, please, we'll share those comments with Johnny, and we'll kind of outline what that looks like, or how to make those comments, or share your thoughts about this process back to Johnny, so that we can get those to the AG's office to help craft that document. Does that sound okay?
Hang on, I will be right back. I'm having a dog emergency.
Good. Okay, so with that, let me pull up my agenda here. We will share this material back out with you. The next item on the agenda was to discuss meeting dates and times. Kind of got into this a little bit, broached the subject very briefly at last month's meeting. We know that it's going to be a challenge to find some meetings. We also think that these meetings, similar to some of our other board meetings, will have to be scheduled with a greater length of time. Some of these meetings go for 3 to 4 hours. If you've seen any of our oil and gas meetings or Parks and Wildlife Committee meetings, commission meetings, those go for sometimes 2 days on end. We're not looking for that necessarily, but what are the thoughts? We do, again, I'll remind you, in terms of the backlog, there are roughly 18 or so proposals pending before the BGN. I know that we are all anxious to get to work. We want to work through this document. So just kind of want to open this up in terms of your thoughts for, oh, now 21 proposals there. Great. So what are your thoughts in terms of meetings going forward? Again, should we have a set date? Do we still want to do a doodle poll each month? I don't know that that's the most efficient way to do this, but I think if we have a set date and time, that would be good to consider. And then I know that we also had some discussion about kind of alternating day and evening type of meetings. Representative Benavides, if I could just maybe put you on the spot here, since you helped get this on the agenda, remind us of it. Did you have any thoughts about this? I know that you and Representative Will and Representative Exum, this is kind of a busy time of year for you.
Well, we're looking at more than likely going back. We'll be going into session next week for 3 days and then having a break and coming back mid-February. So I think there is some time, the first or second week of February, depending on all our personal schedules, where we might be able to have a meeting, particularly in the evenings, but maybe in the daytime then. But after that, I would say March, April, May, and maybe through mid-June. It's each of us have our own schedules, but usually Monday evenings or Friday evenings, there's not a lot of late committee hearings till we get to the very end of the session. So I would say if we can meet sometime during the first 2 weeks in February, and then maybe if we're meeting March, April, May, that we consider maybe a Monday or Friday evening generally. And I don't know what Representatives Will or Exum think about that.
Representative Will?
Yeah, that pretty much works for me. Because I think she's right. I mean, the Mondays and Fridays we probably can work these in. So I'm more than willing to do that.
Representative Exum.
Monday's probably okay. Friday evenings, doing February and probably part of March. I'm probably going to be on the basketball court blowing a whistle.
Okay. Any other thoughts? What I'm thinking right now, based on the comments in the legislative calendar, I'm wondering if we all can find some time that second week of February, gives us some time to prepare for that next document. Let me just start the bidding off, if I can kind of move this conversation along, and see if February 11th, it's a Thursday, 1 to 3, or even on Friday, somewhere during those time periods would work to have a meeting. And then once we enter the session for those couple of months, looking at some Monday meetings, perhaps. Thoughts, ideas? How's Thursday the 11th work? 1 to 3.
Works for me.
I have a problem. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to be the one to bring up a problem, but I have to attend a regular university meeting from 2:30 to 5, every Thursday.
Okay.
And I also teach a class Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at that begins at 5:20. I'm sorry, you know, I mean, don't wait on me, but I thought I should at least mention that.
Doctor, and everybody else would then like Friday 1 to 3, or I know you've got to prep for your meetings, but what about Friday the 12th 1 to 3?
1 to 3.
It won't work for me Friday because I have a leadership meeting Fridays that I missed today, but it's at 1:15. So I can't miss it then.
Could we do the
morning?
Thursday the 13th just slightly earlier if the doctor's scheduling conflict is at 2:30?
Yeah, well, I can meet earlier on Thursday. It's just that at 2:30 I have to be elsewhere. And as long as we're at it, let me also mention that my other class that I teach begins at 12:40 on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm sorry about that. But, you know, it's my day job. And for some reason, the university insists that I teach these classes. So, you know, I have no choice.
So what about the 11th at like 9 or 10 o'clock?
Oh, not a problem for me.
9 o'clock, 9 to 11 on Thursday on the 11th?
Sure, I can be there for that.
Well, February oh yeah, that's right, Thursday. Never mind. 9.
Kathy, how are you looking on that Thursday, the 11th at 9 o'clock? Everybody else looking pretty good? Any objections? Wow. All right, why don't we start there? Representative Benavides.
I just wanted to suggest for that meeting that maybe, because hopefully the meeting after we'll adopt a process at that meeting and get going, that maybe we could get a list of at least what the 21, I think you said, proposals that are in front of us are. And that if there are any that might be closest to moving on, that we could get a package with regard to the documents associated with that so we can work on them before a March meeting.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that's a good point. We can actually begin sharing what is pending before the BGN. I just want to try and limit the inboxes a little bit, but we can share that out as they publish that material. So that's easy to do. And that might be something that we want to kind of discuss at the next meeting, depending on where we get with that process. There might be some in order, and we'll have that conversation how about with Ms. Runyon. If there's something that's relatively ready to go in, maybe that's something we just kind of want to try and take a look at and maybe kind of see how us having a conversation around that might actually shake out or even inform our process that we are developing. But we will get you that information following this meeting of what that backlog looks like. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so with that, we'll then also look towards March and maybe those Monday evenings during that legislative session and kind of see what everybody's calendar looks like. We can come back individually. Maybe John, you can work with everybody and identify what those look like and see if we can't get something set up around that calendar.
Okay, yes, I can do that, Tim.
Okay, I appreciate that. Any other comments or questions about about meetings? Okay, and now with that, then I'm going to move on to the next agenda item here real quick and just check to see if there is any public comment. If there's public comment and you are participating today, there is that raise your hand function under the participants, or you might be able to enter into the chat. I think that's been enabled for everybody here. So is there any public comment? All right, seeing no public comment,
Yeah, I had a public comment. I raised my hand if that's okay.
Okay, yes, Tim.
Hey, my name's Tim. Thanks for the public comment. I'm a geographer here in Denver. And my public comment, first of all, was just that I think, yeah, public comment is a good idea. And it sounded like all the discussion about it was good, and I'm for it. And then also, I was reading kind of in the paper that for the Mount Evans name, the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes had kind of requested that Mount Blue Sky be for it. And I just wanted to voice my support for that. I think it would be, you know, good for the Cheyenne and Arapaho people who are still living here in Colorado. And it would also help kind of get rid of some of the problematic names that litter the Colorado landscape. So that was my comment, and thanks very much for listening.
Great, thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Runyon.
Thank you very much. We have a brand new pending issue in Colorado that I don't even know quite where to start. It's come to my attention, and I did say at some point we would like to include the Colorado board. Do you all have 5 minutes more? I'm not looking for an answer, I guess. Just I want to share something with you. I mentioned already that there's 21 proposals actively pending, and Tim pointed out, yes, Mount Blue Sky is on the brand new list, so that's one of the 21 now. You might recall my original presentation. The first proposal we got from Mount Evans, Mount Cheyenne Arapaho, has now been withdrawn by that proponent. She also supports the Mount Blue Sky proposal. So that'll be in the packet that ultimately will come to you all when that name comes up. And this is very timely too, in that just this morning I had a meeting with the Texas State Names Committee about those name changes that were mentioned in the article that Johnny shared with you all. So hot off the press, those will be coming back to the BGN for a second consideration in the next few months. So there'll be an update to that article, I hope, at some point. So the issue I wanted to share is there's a mountain in Teller County called Squaw Mountain. And I got a call maybe 6 weeks ago, I guess, from a local resident. It's just outside the boundary of the city of Victor in Teller County. And she's very, very concerned with this name being on federal maps and want to know who knew about the history. And we had nothing in our files. We could just tell her when it first appeared on federal maps and that presumably it was a name found in local use. And this is an area that's being heavily mined. So there's also some concern that this mountain may not be there much longer, but nonetheless, it's officially named Squaw Mountain. And so we discussed the process, and I explained that she could submit a proposal to us, which she did. She threw out various different options. She basically told me that she has tried to get input on this matter from the various Ute tribes with a history in the area, and none of them have responded to her. And she's, to be perfectly honest, very upset that nobody cares about this name other than her, apparently. So she wanted to find a name that would, be appropriate replacement. So she ended up submitting to the BGN a proposal for Indigenous Mountain. And it's within her rights to propose a name. So we as the staff took it to the US BGN at our December meeting. As I heard mention the word triage, we're doing the same thing. We're having an initial consideration, and our board members hummed and hawed and said, we don't like the idea of proposals that are simply placeholders, which is what this individual said, that she really, really hopes that somebody will come back with a better name. But to, quote, start the conversation, she would propose Indigenous Mountain. Our board said, no, try harder, come back with a better name. We're more than willing to consider a name change, but we don't care for your choice. And again, we don't accept placeholders or names that just start the conversation. So I informed this individual that the BGN declined to consider her particular proposal. She is not happy, to put it mildly. She left me 2 long phone messages. She seems to think that the email implied that the BGN wants to retain the name Squaw Mountain forever, that we don't want to change the name, that we are not listening to her concerns. to be honest, she used some vulgar language in what she thinks the word squaw means. It was, so I can't even repeat, I will not repeat. But she basically says she's very upset, I'm very disappointed. I cannot believe that the US board will not change this name. She copied the the mayor and the city hall members, and I spoke to both of them in the last week or so. They both said, well, yes, this woman is kind of a bit of a loose cannon. Clearly she has her heart's in the right place, but she's not following the process. And she basically concluded by saying that the Colorado State Board needs to get involved and step up and find a name or support a name change. So I'm only sharing this with you as sort of an idea of the kinds of things we deal with when people don't think things go their way and they don't stop to understand or review the processes. So there's nothing you need to worry about right now. I think I'm going to respond to the email group and say the board is more than willing to consider a name change, but you need to find something better. Director Redhorse, I'd like to maybe talk to you offline sometime about your thoughts of this. Again, she feels very strongly that the tribes need to step up and provide a better replacement. But again, she's just taking all out of context and is very upset. And it didn't make my Christmas Eve when I got this long, very accusatory voice message. Those of you who know me, I can tell I grew up in England, and her message basically said, oh, well, Jenny, you grew up in England, you can't possibly understand how this word can be offensive to American tribes and how our Western culture is so different, and you can't possibly appreciate my concern. And to be honest, I took that personally. I've been doing this job for 26 years. I know very well what that name means to people. So anyway, and not to scare you all away from the naming business, but these are the kind of public comments you're going to probably get when you open the door for local input. So not to scare you away, but it's not going to be straightforward. So just heads up. Thank you.
I think as long as our process is transparent and respectful, and we anticipate that, which you're absolutely right, it's going to happen, that's the name of the game.
Right. Exactly. Actually, yeah, you're right. Right. And people get upset and they take it personally and they take it out on the person who picked up the phone or, responded to the email. And I get that I'm just a messenger on behalf of the board. I wasn't part of that decision. But nonetheless, yes, you will get some comments, and you're absolutely right. Transparency, public awareness, and the fact that you are closer to these geographic features. People aren't going to come to DC to make a presentation on a name, but they certainly are going to be willing to come to Denver or get online and speak to you in person about these. So just heads up.
Thank you. Representative Benavides?
Yeah, I was just going to mention two things from what you said. Is we didn't discuss if there are inquiries from the public outside of a meeting. I'm assuming the acting chair or the administrator will respond to those on behalf of the board, at least generally on process, or if we need to address that somehow. The second thing you brought up was, as far as if there's a name proposed, and that's what we're evaluating, but let's say we have a hearing and we have public comment and we don't want to do that name, we want to do a different name, this board. Is that fine, or do we just have to say, no, we don't want to do that and go through the whole process again with any proposed other name? Or can we, through public comment and all of that, recommend a name that wasn't completely vetted?
I think that's part of what we need to consider in terms of our processes, absolutely. So yes. Let me go to Dr. Gonzalez, and then I've got Councilmember Joseph next.
Thanks, Tim. Jennifer, I just wanted to thank you for sharing that. And I think that points to the importance of that time period between the initial and then the vote by the board to listen and to gather information, because people just want to be heard, I think. And
oh, yeah,
so I think
absolutely.
There's a level of diplomacy that we have to accept. And she probably felt, even though you felt bad, she probably felt a lot better after expressing herself. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Councilmember Joseph.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add, Jennifer, I have had the same experience. As you can hear, I have an accent and I was born in Haiti. I get people who say the same thing to me. I don't understand anything. Well, I've been in this country for over 20 years, I believe, and I went to high school here, so I understand a lot of things, but you know, people still think I don't understand anything, and sometimes they just say that. I just wanted to add, I still fully support the idea of a public hearing, because although there are people who will not use the process constructively, but the many who will are the ones who should get that opportunity. And I think that to me, I think that's very important. And I think I wanted to go back to something. I don't know if right now is the right moment to mention what Representative Benavides mentioned when it comes to the naming process input. For instance, when someone bring one forward, I'm thinking maybe also part of the process might be who are some of the, aside from the board, who might be a legitimate group of stakeholders that we might look to bring a different name forward. Because yes, this person actually might have a good idea, but because they're not following the process, or the name is not a good name, but they still have a legitimate idea about, you know, renaming, but except that the name is not the right name. So maybe having a group of stakeholders, or at least have a process in place that says, okay, when someone sends a name that is not appropriate, here are the stakeholders we can reach out to get more appropriate names, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any final comments? And actually, before we go there, oh, I'm sorry, Director Redhorse.
Sorry, I just wanted to, you know, thank Jennifer as well for her comments and sharing her experience, you know, and I think it just shows that the importance of having, you know, the stakeholders of tribal representatives themselves to have their perspective shared in each of these proposals, because we, again, I'll point out that all of this is indigenous land, and all of them have the history to each one of these mountains, gorges, and I'm not going to name all of the wonderful natural resources or elements that we have within the state and our nature, but I think, again, it's the importance, you know, and it shows when we have that a pathway for them to share that voice to this board, it doesn't overwhelm them in the capacity issues. I think when we're talking about that outreach to all of the tribal nations that they may have from different stakeholders, entities, agencies, you know, as CCI, we reach out them to different levels at, you know, inviting them to participate at different elements, but their capacity level, right? They only have 7 council members within each of them, and they have their own business as a sovereign nation to conduct, as well as, you know, state business and federal business. So if really we're allowing them to participate and allow, again, establish them and as part of the protocol within our process, I think it's super important for them, because again, it's allowing them that avenue instead of, again, asking them and again, all these different stakeholders asking for their input. So thank you, Jennifer, again, for sharing your experience.
Thank you. And that's very timely, because we really are dealing with that. We have a special committee on tribal communication. We wrangle every month. We talk about how better to get the word out, given that we do have an executive order that says we will consult with all 574 recognized tribes, and we have a staff of 2. All we can do is send out, to be honest, it's an email blast every quarter saying, here are the new proposals we've received. Take a look, comment on any you have an opinion. But I'd love to get your perspective on better ways to communicate with the tribal governments, both in Colorado and elsewhere. And really, you know, what are we doing wrong? What is a better approach? Because these proponents, this woman in Teller County, she said, you know, I'm a white woman, you know, it's not really my place to be offended by this name, but I am offended. I can't sleep at night knowing it's on a map. I had to do something, but I really would like the tribes to step up. And she's upset that the tribes are not reacting or being proactive, or, you know, she's stereotyping in her own way, as am I, in that there doesn't seem to be a real interest, but she would love to have the tribal governments within Colorado be much more engaged in the process. So yes, let's talk about better ways to do this outreach, and maybe your lessons will help in other states too. A dog there. But thank you, appreciate your comments. Thank you for your help.
Thank you. Board members, any final thoughts or comments? With that, I don't think we do not need executive session at this meeting. We will follow up with you in short order here on the proposals that are pending before the BGN. Also, I want you to be thinking about our next meeting. I don't anticipate that we will be electing a temporary chair. So what I'm thinking about here is if you are interested, and we'll put this all in an email, if you are interested in being considered chair or vice chair, we'll have you submit those, your interest to Johnny. Like I said, we can put this in an email. Again, we've got to limit the conversation that we have amongst ourselves. That's why everything goes through Johnny, according to the open meetings laws. So we'll have you submit your interest to Johnny. We can share those back out. Also, we will share out the process presentation that the AG's office put together, and we'll seek out again your comments directly back to Johnny. So with that, I appreciate again everybody's willingness to participate, those from the board here and as well as the public that have taken the time today. Any final thoughts or comments? With that, do I have a motion to adjourn? Dr. Way, is there a second? And Councilmember Joseph, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by raising your hand. All opposed signify as same. And with that, we stand adjourned until February 11th at 9 a.m. Thank you so much.
Thank you.